Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Where we take a look at these markets, we do it from a neoclassical perspective, each time asking ourselves what happened today and what might it tell us about the coming days. We do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. It's broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel L.A. Little. If you subscribe, anytime content is pushed, you'll be notified. It's a good way to keep up with what's going on. As far as what's going on, when you take a NeoTA view of this, if you haven't clicked on this, you can actually get an intro to the site if you're unfamiliar with it. But if you take a Neo view, it was a big bounce day, coming back up to bearish retest regions now on a number of these charts, and we'll look at some of those. As far as what kind of gains did we get here? Big gains again, 2% across the board. We thought we'd see some push up today. Got it even farther than I expected it to get, quite honestly. But big pushes everywhere. Oil 10% higher, over 9%. These kinds of moves certainly aren't not normal, right? Doesn't mean that they can't happen, but day after day after day, where you're getting 5, 6, 7, 8. In case of oil today, 9% moves. These are some relatively wild days, in the markets, and that volatility doesn't typically just go away. So, if you're trading these markets, or if you're watching this thing, ping pong around, realize these swings are going to be huge. I mean, today you actually had huge swings intraday where you had a push up, a gap up off of the strength around the world, pushes up just relentlessly all day, and then it gives it all up, or a good portion of it, and then it rallies all the way right back up to new highs on the day before it's over. That's the sort of all day, and we're talking 40-point swings on the S&P, 3 times today. These are huge moves. If you're trading it intraday, it's eye-opening. But as far as if you're not trading it intraday, you're wondering what people are talking about probably. Okay, so big moves. Let's look at the charts here. So you had the move down, right? Now you got the move going on the way back up. And I swear, over the last 5 years, I've seen enough V-shaped rallies to last me a lifetime. Never had I seen as many as I've seen over the last 5 years. It has become commonplace to V-shape versus to not. Used to, you could almost guarantee that any kind of a move like this, where your volume starts trailing off, you're going to see these things fail, roll back over, give you some sort of a bounce, or retrace right before some sort of an ABCD structure tries to take place if it's going to carry higher. Anymore, they forget all this stuff and they just keep going. Now, the last time this happened was October. I'm going to pull that chart over. And I remember saying at the time that, given the damage that it did, that I was going to get a big bounce, but I certainly did not expect new highs straight away. But that's in fact what happened. And then it continued on up, and then you started getting the chop at the end of the year, right? Got the spring up around February this year, and then it was pretty much range trade until we broke down. That's kind of it in a nutshell. But we had that big V-shaped move, which at the time I thought was virtually impossible. Well, fast forward to today. Here we are. You've already got a hammer reversal. You have huge volume, just like you had back then, even more so now. And now you're getting the V-shaped move again back to the top side. Now recognize, it doesn't mean because you're getting it, it's going to go all the way to the top, but it could do a full retest regen on this weekly chart because it's already back into it. And so that's certainly within, one bar, certainly within the 6-bar minimum that we look at. Over here now it's a little different because, to get back into this bearish retest regen, you're going to have to move quite a bit more tomorrow to get there, right? Because you've already got, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you'd have to get into it tomorrow. So, I guess if the bulls have got that kind of push, then I'm really going to have to believe in the V-shaped move here. But if they don't, we're going to see this thing turn around and come straight back down and set up potentially what we talked about last night, which is some sort of a, A, B, C, D structure potentially, to the top side, which would get it back into that retest regen zone. So that's still what I think is the more likely case. But then again, like I just said, I can't totally dismiss this V shape because I've seen so many of them. I've come to respect them, even though they're kind of sickening to watch because they truly don't allow one, unless you're intraday trading, they don't allow one to get decent entries. And even then, it's sometimes a struggle. That's the S&P. If we look at the NASDAQ, NASDAQ's stronger. NASDAQ's almost back to the retest regen already. And so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars here. So the NASDAQ actually has a chance to get back into it. If you're bearish, you don't want to see that happen. You actually want to see them pull back. You don't want to see it come straight back up and test into it within 6 bars because that says it can get to the other side. And maybe in this case it's not so bad. But the key spot whenever this test takes place is going to be the top of this swing point low, right? And the breakdown bar. That's the key spot. If you get over that, right, you can go back to the tops. So you can see you've already had a huge run back off the bottom, and V-shaped it is here. If you look at the NDX, it's even stronger. The NDX looks like it is going to get into it. You had Apple pushing the last couple of days. You had actually all the big cap tech stocks pushing, and you're almost into it already. The low there is 43.44. You got as high as 43.30. 43.28, almost 29. So you're within just a few points, and we're talking, 50, 60 point swings on this in a day. So, 10 points up really is nothing. That's going to be the target tomorrow. And then finally, if we look at the weak sister here, which is the Russell was able to get over the first hurdle, and that was, of course, the top of the big bar down, right? So this bar that we left volume on, which is going to end up being, well, in the case of the Russell, it's not a swing point low, but in the case of all the others, it will be. It did get over the top of that bar, which says this thing can go higher too. So index-wise, there's nothing here that says it can't go any farther, although we are, on the stronger ones, starting to push up into those bearish retest regens that are starting to line up now. If you look over at the world markets, it's the same thing. Last night we talked about that case in France. And France did push into it today. The top here, 45.89. The low there, 46.01. So you actually pushed into it. Was it? No, it was higher, 46.86. So you pushed into it. The top over here on the bar was 46.71, and you closed just underneath it, 46.58. So push into it, and you actually had a little bit more volume. So that suggests this thing's probably going to test it again and try to get over it tomorrow. So that's the first of those retest regens that are coming into play here on some of these indexes around the world. DAX not as strong, just trying to get to the swing point low. If we look over at Shanghai, which everybody had on their radar before, huge sell-off. Now they get a bounce. A lot of speculation on government buying causing the bounce, but I'm not going to try to get into that. But if we look elsewhere, the topics got a decent bounce, so kind of an ugly candle at the end of the day. I did see India get that big bounce I was talking about last night. They were up something like, let me pull them up here, something like 400, 2%. It was about 400, I think, was the number. So big bounces all around the world. And some of these are just coming back. Like, for example, India is coming back into the retest regen zone, and you'll see that in a number of them if you go through them all. So the first set of tests, the places that are more significant are coming into view on these indexes, not only here on the strong ones in the U.S., but also around the world. If we go in and look at some of the sectors, you also have that taking place on the stronger sectors. For example, if I come in here on the discretionary spending, consumer discretionary, the low over here is 75.44. You're into that bar now. You close into it 53, and the top is 76.13. So you're in there doing the retest regen already. What you want to see if you're bullish is you want to see them get over these bars. You want to see them get over it, stay over it for a bar or two. Each one of these, not every one, but almost every one of them, is lined up this way, right? Where the first big breakdown bar, the bar that breaks everything out, the top where the gap is about where the swing point lows were. And a lot of times it happens this way. So this becomes doubly important, kind of a critical area. If you can't get over it, it invites the sellers to come in. So that's what you want to measure against to give you some indication of what's going to happen. You can see the healthcare slowly coming back up to its swing point lows. I believe the consumer durables are doing the same thing. Yeah, they're already into it, doing the test now. So the stronger ones are the ones you want to look at. Here's the tech. 40.79 is the low, and it's almost there, almost to test it. So that's what I would be looking at tomorrow and in the coming days. How do those first set of retest regens play out? Do they sell them or do they continue to buy them? Finally, if we move over to the currency markets, we had those big spikes on all that selling on Monday in the FXE and the FXY. Well, they're just reeling them right back in. These currencies are going to go down before it's over, and eventually that will probably be the case. So if you're thinking that these markets are ones to buy, think again, because the thing you heard out of the European Union today was that they may have to do even more QE, right? As soon as the market starts stumbling, they start talking about more QE. That didn't help gold all that much. Got a bounce out here today, but it actually has volume on the bounce and set a new low. I think it did, actually. Maybe it didn't. Yeah, I actually got a decent bounce. Gold can bounce a little bit more then. That's the stocks. While gold itself actually didn't look that strong, neither did silver. Silver, if you pull it up and look at it, is already broken down underneath all of its lows again. Silver keeps telling us we're going lower, and has for quite some time. If you look on the other side, bonds are doing the exact opposite, right? Pulling back. Big volume on the way up, big volume on the way down. Bonds continue to look like a sell, not a buy. So if I try to wrap it all up, it appears to me that you're going to get all these tests. And as reluctant as I am to believe in the V-shaped move this time around, I have to respect that it's possible. At the same time, when I look at the S&P 500 and these other indexes, especially the stronger ones like the NDX, I recognize that, I don't have to decide ahead of time. I can take my time and see what this does. If you didn't do any buying down here or in this area or wherever it was, it's a little late to start buying up here. Yeah, maybe this goes all the way back to the top in that V-shaped move. And I know it's worked over the last 4 or 5 years, but folks, that's a hard buy at this point. And I would be much more inclined to see how it does the test. I'd much more be willing, let's say, to buy it on the breakout over this breakdown bar than to buy it here as it's coming into it with the idea that it's probably going to retrace off of it. May get a little bit more bump up tomorrow in front of Jackson Hole, but I suspect by the end of the day it's going to flatten out, maybe reverse. I've probably seen the most of this move at this point. I'm going to leave it at that. I'll talk to you next week. Have yourself a great one. Enjoy your trading, and I'll see you then. Good night.